Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Yondi Metu. I am the chairperson of the Johannesburg BMF branch, and I'd like to welcome you to this session today. So our topic for today is called Pivoting Businesses During Economic Challenges. I think this is a very important topic, and it's very essential at this time because everyone is feeling the pinch. I think no one was ready for this COVID time, but we've had to deal with it. And in dealing with it, businesses and people in general have had to pivot. And I've just Googled the meaning of pivot. Pivot means to change. It means that it brings discomfort. And in discomfort, we need to learn, we need to reset, we need to rethink, and we need to relearn. And that's what we've had to do. And resetting or pivoting means taking things into a different level. It means that while we wait for the government to do things, we as the people, we as the businesses need to do something. We can't just wait. We need to think of ways. We need to be creative. We need to look at talent, and talent becomes a determinant of what should be. So therefore, we need to have new talent. We need to have new leadership. And therefore, I think this topic is it's an interesting topic. It's close to my heart, and it's close to everyone because, I mean, business is everything. Business is people that have vegetable stalls. It's people that have businesses that can't operate at this time. Therefore, you need to be creative and see, what do you do in this challenging times? So therefore, I welcome you, and I'd like to welcome Brehndan, who's going to be our presenter today. And I'll introduce Brehndan in due time. So let me just take you through the agenda. So we have about, let's say, an hour and 30 minutes into this session. So we're gonna have Mpho Moseki is the provincial chairperson. So she'll give us remarks in terms of what's happening in the province and in what to look forward to as the BMF. As you know, that the BMF is close to making sure that we as Black people and also managerial leadership are active in the economy. So therefore, she'll give us what we need to do in terms of being active in the economy, in terms of being part of the change that we want to be. So let me give Mpho, the chairperson of the province, just remarks and an update of what to look forward to as part of the BMF going forward. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As Yondi said, my name is Mpho Moseki, and I'm the current chair of Gauteng Province. Mine is really to just give a few remarks and overlay the topic for today. This session is part of the Transforming Ecosystems series that we as the BMF Gauteng started last year. We started with the health ecosystems, where we had different professionals and leaders within the health industry come and talk to us about what the health ecosystem is about. And the main levers that we really employ to drive transformation as BMF are really policy and advocacy. We unlock market access, and we also enhance capacity, and we build competencies through managerial leadership. And this year we started with forums that build capacity with the networking sessions, where we had the British Commission come and talk to us about scholarship opportunities for master's programs. We then had, we also at the same session had the executive coach to come and talk to us about the importance of self-development. You would have seen the invites from the BMF I&I program that has just launched, which is really an intensive program that is aimed at empowering innovators. So the focus for today is to empower you as business owners, as business leaders. And we talk of business leaders because as people working in corporate, we're leading business units, we're leading businesses, and also have a responsibility to ensure that the businesses where we work continue to be a going concern, so that the unemployment rate in South Africa doesn't continue to worsen. So we want to empower business leaders and business owners to pivot and hedge appropriately so that businesses and enterprises thrive and continue to be sustainable. So we hope that today's sessions will really provide you with insights and tools that will enable you to navigate and survive during these economic challenges. Thank you. I'll hand over to Yondi. I'm sure we're going to have a great session. Thank you.
Thank you, Mpho. Thank you, Mpho, for that intro. Before we go ahead and I introduce Brehndan Botha, who's going to be our speaker for the day, let's just have a few housekeeping rules. So if everyone can keep their phones or devices on mute, that would be very appreciated. If you've got a question while the session is going on, so what we're going to do is that Brehndan's going to do his presentation. Once that's done, then we're going to go into a Q&A session. Once the Q&A, and then we can have a discussion. So during the Q&A question, if you raise your hand up, then we can have you, and you'll have your video on, and then you can actually then have your question in vocal. So if you have a question while it's during the session, then you can type it in. So there's a what do you call it? A message room. I don't know what you call it. And you can type in your question, and then we'll then deal with it once Brehndan is finished. Also, we are trending tonight, and it's called, it's at BMF Gauteng. I think we're on Twitter and on Facebook. So if you want to tag it, that would be great. The other thing is that this session is going to be available on the BMF YouTube page within 3 days. So you can also get this session recorded on there. So that's it in terms of housekeeping rules. And let me introduce Brehndan. So Brehndan was so kind to devote his time to be part of this session. So in a nutshell, I'll just introduce Brehndan. Brehndan is a certified coach, is one of the 50 certified action coaches and business coaches in South Africa. He's also a former marketing procurement lead, formerly known as Brand House. He's an entrepreneur and has 26 years of experience in business. So he's got multi-million clients. He's got a marketing background, fundraising, sponsorship, advertising. He's worked for Caltex, Woolworths, Submarine, McDonald's, Metro Rail. So he's a business builder. He's passionate about incubation and uses globally proven strategies to businesses. He's instrumental in creating the Raymond Ackerman Academy of Entrepreneurship and is in part of various business incubator. His mission is to be the business coach that business leaders need at a time that they need. So I think it's very important that right now we've got a person who is wanting to build people, wanting to advise people, and being part of this conversation. So we are grateful to Brehndan for giving us his time and making sure that he's part of us, he's part of the BMF, he's part of giving back and part of building the Black community. So we welcome Brehndan to this platform. Thank you. I think if you can then allow Brehndan to come in.
Thank you very much. Okay, really privileged and honored to be here this evening with you all. Thank you very much for providing the platform and allowing me the opportunity to share some of these insights around transforming ecosystems and the impact that pivoting businesses can have during economic challenges and the effect on those ecosystems. So all due regard to the BMF leadership, the membership, and to everyone who's dialed in this evening. So with that, let's get underway. I think the one rider that I want to just put on the table quickly is that this is not specifically a COVID-19 response or a COVID-19 presentation. I think COVID-19 has given us, and the whole lockdown scenario has given us an opportunity to provide context around some of this conversation, but in the context of business, challenge could be anything from a financial challenge marketing challenge, product challenges that you might be facing. And so the context of the conversation this evening is about economic challenge. It's about challenges to the business, challenge in the economy. And the principles I'm going to be walking through are applicable to all of those circumstances, not just the circumstances around COVID-19 that we currently find ourselves in. So I think really important that we just get a couple of key concepts very clear. And thank you, Yondi, for the Google interpretation. And absolutely, pivoting is in effect a dramatic change in policy, position, or strategy within a business. And that's a very key concept to keep in mind all the way through the presentation. The second thing I want us to be clear on is the idea of an ecosystem. So we don't operate in a vacuum. Our businesses are part of a system, they're part of an environment, and everything we do and everyone we interact with is part of that environment, and that makes up the ecosystem. So it's that system of business that we engage in as part of our business environment, and which is then impacted by our business. So what is a business? Well, I want to leave you with the definition, the ActionCoach definition of a business, and that is it's a commercial, profitable enterprise that works. But more importantly, it's a commercial, profitable enterprise that works without the business owner. And by that, we mean without the business owner needing to be there every single second of every single day. It's a systemized environment that delivers results consistently as an engine without needing to have the hands-on approach every single day. So with that, let's get into the concept of pivoting businesses. So when we find ourselves in a time of challenge, it's important to maybe just create the sense of where is the mindset of challenge. So I want you to think of challenge as not just something that presents itself, but challenge in effect generates with us a sense of uncertainty, and because we don't necessarily know how to respond. And so when we're faced with uncertainty, it typically brings up fear. And once it brings up fear, we bring up a sense of chaos, as in we don't know what is happening within our environment, within our business. So we typically then respond to challenge, or can respond to challenge, in one of three ways. And the first one is the nosedive. And the nosedive is what I characterize as being those businesses or those people who look at the situation and go, well, let's see where this goes. Let's see where we end up after this time of challenge has passed. And once it's passed, we will then get into some activity and try to recover where we come from. The second group is then the survive group. And typically the mindset in the survive group is saying, you know what, we can hang in there. We're probably strong enough. We've got enough finances to really ride out the bumps, but we're focused very much on where we are now. We've got to get through this, and between nosedive and survive, I'm sure many of you have heard the expression, this too shall pass. Well, life passes as well, but we have to manage our way through life. And so that journey from nosedive to survive is about managing. It's about focusing not on the now necessarily, yes, where we are now, but where we're actually going. But typically here, the mindset is still about, we should come out of this okay. We're a big company, we're a big organization, we've got the resources, we can ride out the bumps. Maybe we'll lose a little bit of market share, maybe we'll lose a couple of customers, clients, deals, etc. here and there. But as long as we don't actually shut down the business, we're in a winning space. We're still who we are, and we can still carry on. Then there's the thrive mindset, and this is the one. This is the space where I want everybody to keep their minds in tonight. The thrive mindset is about looking at the space of challenge and going, what are the opportunities for us? What does the future actually look like? How do we remain future focused? Because it's only when we look ahead that we start to see what the long-term journey actually could possibly be, and in that, where the growth opportunities are. Because what most people have gotten into through particularly this period that we're in is this conversation about a new normal. The working from home is the new normal. Online Zoom presentations, Zoom meetings, that's the new normal. Well, my challenge to that is the new normal's not here yet. The new normal is still being developed. We're all heading back into our offices. We're heading back into businesses that have been separated. Teams have been far apart for weeks and weeks. They're now coming back in. It's a sense of change. We've come through various stages of change. And so the new normal is still to be developed. So the thriving mindset is actually the one that is ultimately going to decide and determine what the rules of the game are that we play once the new normal comes about. But the new normal won't just come about by accident. The new normal is going to be set by the people with the thriving mindset. So it's the thrivers who will set the rules of the game that we play from this point on. And that's quite important, because when we talk about pivoting our business, we also think of pivoting as a growth phase. And that's really, really important, because pivoting is not just about doing something different. It's not just about change. We can actually equate pivoting to growth, pivoting to improvement in the business. And it's not necessarily just that we're growing bottom line or we're growing finances. We're improving in order to survive a process that takes us into a growth space. And yes, the word pivot has to a certain extent been overused. But the principle of pivoting, the principle of change, is still something that remains absolutely relevant in every business. And the 10 points that I've put out here very specifically points out why that is important. So the first point we're going to look at is mindset, our focus forward view of the world. We're then going to look at our business structure. We'll look at the communication structure, and this is really where we start talking about the ecosystem. The marketing and sales of the business, more from a product point of view and a service point of view, our products and service delivery. Then we'll talk about the supply pipeline. We'll talk about workforce reallocation and what those changes mean to a business and the impact on the business. And then we'll look at what are the new opportunities and product offerings and how do we lead that. And then resources, education, training needs in terms of building our capacity in the business. And then the metrics and the measures of success. Now, what I think is really important to bring out here is that the challenges that we often face, they're the net result of circumstances in our market or in our environment that we've not necessarily taken awareness of. We've not taken cognizance of it, and as a result, we've not managed it. So one thing I'd like to point out is that we've seen a number of businesses go under during this time. Chances are they've not gone under because of COVID-19, because of lockdown. They've gone under because the structure of the business, even before this challenge, was not where it was supposed to be. And so when the challenge arrived, they were not able to manage through that challenge in an agile way and in a structured way. And so a crisis like COVID really actually just shone the spotlight and exploded the cracks that were already existing in the business. And that's quite important to consider when we think about the process of pivoting. And why is that? Because the process of pivoting actually affects 8 out of the 10 points on a foundational level that I've raised. So 8 of the 10 points that affect a pivot in a business directly affect the foundation of that business. So 80%, 8 out of 10, 80% is business foundation impact. And that's super crucial, because we then have to ask ourselves, if that's the case, can we afford to get things wrong when we need to change or take our business through a process of change? So I want to just share this model with you quickly. This is part of the ActionCoach IP. We call this our 6 steps to building a successful business. The bottom 2 steps, mastery and niche, are in effect the foundations of the business. In the mastery space, we talk about our destination mastery, as in our forward vision. We talk about the money mastery, the financial basis of the business. We talk about self-mastery, the management of the business owner and the business leadership and what value they bring into the business. And then delivery mastery, our ability to deliver consistently and to deliver at quality in a way that connects with our customer base. So the impact of change in our business directly speaks to those foundations, because niche then also speaks to marketing and where we generate our income from for the business. So if the pivot process starts with a focus forward, with a future view of the business, then it is super crucial that as business owners and business leaders, we are clear and firm on what a new business looks like. Why? Because as the heads of the business, it's incumbent on us to revision where the business is going, where we're taking our teams, realign with those structures, realign with the goals, and then lead on the basis of who does what and when. It's at this point that we really need strong leadership in the business. Now, one of my favorite bugbears from my days in corporate is the expression that goes, "Don't worry, we'll build the plane while we're flying it." In fact, we have to build the plane while we're flying it because we don't really have any other choice. Guys, this is pressure time. We've got to get on and do this. And my challenge in that conversation is, if we don't get it right at the beginning, then how on earth are we going to make it through the process in a constructive way? We can't take a business that we've taken 5, 10, 15, sometimes even 50 or 60 years and more to build, and expect that we can impact change in that business within 5 days, 15 days, maybe even a month. The reality is we have to take the brave step to stand back and look at where we're going into the future. So I want to leave you with that thought. Boeing, who builds planes, Boeing doesn't fly planes while building them. Boeing completes the plane, and only when that plane is ready to fly do they allow it out onto the apron at the airport and allow that plane to take flight. So we have to ask ourselves, what is our point of focus? What is our point of pause in a business in order to effect positive change that has long-lasting impact on the business? So that brings us then to the point of what is the business structure. So we're taking the time, we're allowing the space for thinking, we're allowing the space for thinking to develop. We don't have time for trial and error, so really important we get this right from the start. And that brings us to the question then, what is our do different? What is the thing that we now need to do that sets us apart from what we did before? What is the change what is the change that we are looking to bring forward into the business? And how does that impact the tasks, the processes, the finances, and the people in our organization? And a crucial question we have to ask ourselves here is the pivot permanent? So is the change that we are making in the organization, in our businesses, in our companies, is that change permanent, or is it a short-term change? Because that may in itself determine that there is another pivot, there's another point of change coming, either going back to where we were or another change to take us further on in the process. So I'm sure all of you have seen a number of pivots happening at this stage during the COVID crisis. A number of businesses offering masks, sanitation products, etc. And you have to ask yourself that question, is that a permanent shift for them, and what happens when that opportunity dries up? So we also need to consider very crucially whether the pivot remains part of our business and whether what we did before the pivot continues. So are we seeing a parallel development of the business, or is it a handover from what we did before to something new? And as we consider that, we have to look at where do we make changes. So my advice in that conversation is to say it's not about the one change that affects 100% impact on your business. It's about 100 changes that are each responsible for 1%. Why is that important? Because it makes the change a lot more manageable and it makes the change measurable. Because let's assume you plan 100 changes to each deliver 1%. Well, if circumstances change and you're only able to effect 20 of those changes, you've impacted your business by 20%. But if you plan to make one change that impacts your business 100%, if you fail to make that one change, then you would be a 100% loss. So 100% impact, or one change to deliver 100% impact that is not successful, then fails to deliver the desired impact in the business. So having looked at the business structure, we have to also consider that the structure is going to impact as I say, the foundation of the business, so the finances, because really this is what change in time of challenge is about. It is about ensuring the lifeblood and the continuity of the business, its cash flow, its finance, its profitability. And so the importance of understanding what your fixed costs and what your variable costs in the business are going to be, planning for that, working through that, and being able to deliver that as part of the change process. So now, having looked at the fundamentals of the business, or the foundational space of the business, let's look at how we now start impacting the ecosystem. So how does the pivot impact our ecosystem? And I'm going to unpack that in a little bit more detail on the next slide. But suffice it to say that when we identify the ecosystem, we have to think of employees, we have to think of customers, we have to think of suppliers, we have to think of clients if we're in a service business, and understand that everything we do, because remember, coming back to the definitions, everything we do has an impact on the environment around us. Let's talk marketing and sales quickly. So marketing and sales requires us to review our products, review our service lines. What are we offering to the market? And here it's quite important for us to consider, is the market that we're addressing through our pivot the same? Who are they and where are they? Because our customers and our clients, as a pivot from where we were, are not necessarily going to be the same. They could be completely different. And so we need to take into account what their needs are and how we address our pivot to answer those needs, because there's also a question of sustainability and suitability. Does it make sense for us to pivot a business where there is no need or where there is no client? We still won't be generating cash flow and income. And then it's the question of how and where do customers and clients access our product? We have to make it easy for them to be able to access. We have to make it easy for them to be able to buy. And so there's also the question of how do we educate them around where to get that product? And sometimes we may need to re-educate our clients and our customers around how to deal with us and how to buy from us. And that's part of the marketing conversation, which we'll get to in one of the following slides. Then we get to products and services delivery. So when we look at products and services delivery, it's about how do we communicate what our new service delivery is? How do we define that? And for many of us, it's a question of how can I offer this at the best price to my market so that the market takes up the opportunity? That's a conversation I want to discourage. And I want you to think about value of what you're offering versus price. In other words, what is the quality that you are putting in your customers and clients' environment that makes it worth the money that they spend? So quality versus price, value versus price, always, before we talk things like price reduction or the price point of the market. And then within that is the question of consistency of delivery. Can I get my product to market consistently? Can I maintain the quality of product? So quality product consistency, consistency of delivery to the market, and can I get that product to market in time, on time, every time? And that's the very simple question when we start talking about our environment and we start talking about the impact on our ecosystem. And one of the easiest ways for us to assess that, and it really kind of brings all of these points together, is when we look at, and I'll call back to my procurement days here, we look back to a model called Porter's 5 Forces, and some of you might be familiar with Porter's 5 Forces. So there are 5 areas of impact on this slide, and it's a really useful way for us to look at the market, because not only does it allow us to look at the market now, it also allows us to look at the future state of the market. It then gives us a view of who is playing in that market, i.e. who's delivering services and product into the market, but also gives us the opportunity to look at who is buying from that market and what is the future possibilities of the market. So when we conduct a pivot, when we undertake a pivot, a dramatic change in our business strategy, we might be re-entering our existing market from a different perspective, or we might be entering a new market. And so we have to look at things like, what are the barriers to entry in a new market? So for example, people who've now been doing hand sanitizers and face masks, are there high barriers to entry? Well, on the face masks, no, because all you need is, you need some cloth, you need some elastic, and that can be manufactured at scale. So it's been very easy, for example, for clothing manufacturers to pivot into manufacturing of masks. It's been a lot more difficult to pivot into the production of hand sanitizers, for example, because, excuse me, the messaging has told us that needs to be alcohol-based. And we'll address that in a minute or two. We then need to look at who in the market has a particular loyalty to a certain brand, and how much market share does that brand hold? And with your new entry into the market, how much can you challenge the market share that existing brands hold? And of course, we have to look at how much is it going to cost us to be able to access that market. So not just looking at it from our point of view, but looking at it from how many other businesses, how many of my competitors may consider moving into the same space. And so am I at an advantage that I have capital, I am able to get into the market reasonably easily while my competitors may not be? Or is it a space that multiple competitors might be able to enter into? And so very quickly we get into a space where that segment becomes saturated, competition increases, differentiation is minimal, and we then find that people start competing on price. And then, of course, are there any government restrictions around being able to deliver the sort of service and product that we're looking to pivot into? Then we're looking at the bargaining power of buyers. So taking a leaf from what we've just said, the number of businesses, the number of entrants into that segment, the number of customers available, number of clients available in that segment, how many of them are competing or seeking those products and services on a price basis? How many of them, by virtue of demand, have the ability to drive price down? So how do we position then our value proposition, our unique selling point with those customers and clients in order to overcome the pricing question? And then, how big is that industry able to support the orders that we are looking to deliver now through our business? So whether that's physical product or whether that's service, what is the scale at which we are able to satisfy the needs of our new potential customers and clients, because that speaks to the consistency of delivery, our ability to deliver, and our ability to deliver in a space where our customers and clients actually want to access that product. As important as that conversation is the question of how many products are available in the market. So in other words, is my customer, is my client able to get from somebody else what I'm selling? So can they substitute the service that I'm offering for another service? Can they substitute the product that I'm offering for another product? That means that I then need to, again, up my value game in a space that I may not necessarily be 100% familiar with yet, in order to make this change, to make this pivot successful. And this is where our suppliers very often can play a key role in how we get into market and how we present quality, very simply because they typically understand the product or the service that we are looking to deliver and can help with building innovation, and therefore be able to build a value proposition for us that is significantly different to potentially our competitors, and that is more appealing to our clients. So looking at that then from a threat of substitute products and a threat of substitute services, the proposition around the value that we offer is absolutely important, because, as I said, it is value over price. If we are able to offer the value that our clients need, that our customers need, then the pricing conversation becomes less of an issue. And in a situation where our change is typically as a result of either needing to access new markets, deal with sales issues, deal with product issues, or deal with financial issues, in the case currently dealing with health issues, it's super important that we protect our cash flow, that we protect our income. That's the whole reason for conducting a change, because we need to work on the survival of the business and the growth of the business even through that process. So if we're able to differentiate on the basis of value and quality, then the threat of substitution potentially falls away. And so similarly also, it's the bargaining power of suppliers. Super crucial to involve our suppliers in the innovation process in order to be able to offer a value-based product to our suppliers, to our customers, because our suppliers, again, if they are sole suppliers in a particular industry, chances are they're going to drive price. And so because they can drive price, it's important that we are able to get our product and our service sold to our customers and our clients at the right level in a way that makes it sustainable for our business. So dealing with rivalry among existing competitors as well is going to start creating a picture around saturation of the market. How many businesses are concentrated in the space that we would like to play in, that we would like to operate in? And so overcoming that competition on the basis of value, again, becomes really, really important, especially in a space where we are looking at an industry growth. So if we want to pivot into an industry that is set up for growth, then we have to look at our competitor market, because the more competitors in a market, yes, it can often be healthy, but it can very often create a sense of more access to services, more access to product, and that makes the differentiation again so much more important. So let's move on to step 6 in the pivot process, and that, coming from our assessment of the market, is very much the question around the supply pipeline. Is your supply chain or your value chain still the same? Supply chain in the case of producing product, value chain in the process of providing a service to our customers and to our clients. So here we might need to look at what are the new or external expertise that are required in order to fulfill what it is that we need to deliver to customers and clients. And how do we get that on board? How do we develop those capabilities, understanding that sometimes our change process, our pivot process, can often be into a space where we're not familiar. And so we have to build that expertise, number one. But number two, we also have to train into that space in order to be able to deliver the value that we've been talking about. Excuse me. It's therefore also of crucial importance that we understand who are our new supply chain partners, who are our new suppliers, who need to be brought on board in order to help us deliver our product. And then when we get to our workforce reallocation, we have to ask ourselves the question, is the old team capabilities that I have, are those team capabilities correct? Are they right for the change that I need to make? And are they able to sustain us through the pivoting process, through the change process that we're embarking on? So I'm not for a minute saying we need to get rid of the old team, but we need to most likely enhance the capabilities of that team. So we need to grow the capabilities. We may need to bring on additional capabilities and additional skills, or we may need to make a plan to remove some of the capabilities that are no longer appropriate. If, of course, we're going to be running the old business, at some point, we need to allow for continuity of skill, continuity of capability with our old team. And if it's going to be running in parallel with our pivoted area, we need to also cater for that to make sure that the business has the capabilities in the right spaces to deliver both product and service to our customers and our clients. And then point 8 is actually quite an interesting one. And this is about our opportunity to shape the need and educate our customers and clients about the new offerings. And I spoke about this earlier. So when we look, for example, at the process around COVID-19 and the whole lockdown conversation, communication that came out around the health issues and around sanitizing was really about pushing an alcohol-based sanitizer. And when I was doing some research on the effectiveness of sanitizers and what is the best way to actually deal with the coronavirus, I came across actually quite an interesting read, and it listed the most effective ways of cleansing self and environment of this virus. And actually, alcohol-based sanitizers were point number 3. The first point was soap and water. The second point was a bleach-based either solution or bleach-based cleanser. Yet 99% of the information that was shared around sanitizing the COVID-19 virus was alcohol-based. So we generated a need within the market for alcohol-based sanitizers to a point actually where there was almost not an ability to supply. In fact, that's why we ran out of things like masks, gloves, and sanitizers, alcohol-based sanitizers, because of the need that messaging created within our market. So when we look at how we educate our customers and clients about their needs and about how they respond to what it is that we have to offer, there is an opportunity absolutely to shape a need and create a need for our product and for our service to be accepted by that market. And that creates the opportunities then actually for marketing. So as we get to step 9 in the pivot process, and we talk about resources, we talk about education, and we talk about training needs, it's a question of how quickly can we develop the expertise to deliver consistent quality at pace, because again, remember, we're dealing with a situation where we need to move quickly, but we need to move with confidence and we need to move properly. And so we can't find ourselves in a position where we're going into a market on a trial and error basis. So getting the right partners on board, engaging with our ecosystem, our suppliers, our distributors, our subject matter experts, our employees, our staff, to be able to pull together the right capabilities that allows us to deliver quality consistently into market and at pace. And of course, we need to measure. We need to be measuring what it is that we are achieving. How are we conducting that measurement? So do we have standards in place, or do those standards still need to be defined? Do they need to be delivered in order for us to be able to measure? So the setting of KPIs, and there's an old adage that says, be careful what you measure, because what you measure is what you will find. And we always say, yes, you can't manage what you can't measure. But we also need to be clear that we're measuring the right things, because when we look for a certain result, when we measure for a certain result, that is typically the result that we're going to find. So if we're measuring for the wrong result, we will find what appears to be the right result, but it may not actually be in the best interest of the business. So again, really important that we bring this back to the future vision and the delivery mastery in our business. Where do we want to take the business in this new pivot? And how do we ensure that we're able to deliver that change either in service or product consistently and at the right quality to the market? And what is the impact back on our business? Is it financial? Is it sales efficiency? Is it marketing effectiveness? Is it improvement in the cost of producing the goods, the cost of goods sold, our COGS? So what is it that we're measuring, and what are we looking to effect the change on? So that's really, really important at the 10th point, to understand what is the outcome of all of the changes that we're making into the business. And so the next point in that question of what we're measuring is understanding and being clear when our pivot success becomes our business success. So are we changing just for the sake of changing, and is it temporary? Or is this our business that we're taking forward from this point on? So to the previous question that I raised, is the pivot a short-term? Is it a short-term change in our business? Or is it a long-term? And is it the change? Or is it a change made in parallel to what we are already doing and what we will continue doing in the business? And the measurement of our business success based on the pivot success comes back to what I mentioned earlier. If the purpose of our success is to achieve financial stability or financial growth during a period of challenge, then we need to manage and we need to measure whether the business outcome is financially successful, whether our sales are increasing, whether our marketing is more effective. So does the change actively impact and effectively impact the success of our business? And that's when pivoting success becomes the business success. And a really crucial question in all of what we're measuring is the question of how big is the bubble? And by bubble, I mean how big is the opportunity that we are pivoting into? How big is the opportunity that we are changing the business into? If you remember going back to the Porter's 5 Forces model, is how saturated is the market that we're entering? How much competition is there in the market? And how big is the customer need or the client need? Because when that bubble pops, the ability for us to deliver business success through our pivot also pops. It also disappears. So we have to be managing. It's part of our management, it's part of our measurement, but it's part of our future vision of the business, and it's part of how we gear the fundamentals from our supply chain, our ability to deliver, the way our staff works, the consistency of quality. All of that is designed to deliver into an opportunity that we have measured, that we are sure of, an opportunity that we have defined before we allow the plane to take off, rather than an opportunity that we try to manage as the plane is flying, gaining altitude, and we're kind of trying to find our way through that. Because what typically is going to happen is we're going to hit another turbulent patch, and then it's a question of, do we need to change again? Is there another pivot that's needed? Or do we actually outfly the need that is currently happening in the market? And therefore, do we find ourselves in a space where there is either no longer a need, or there is no longer an industry that we're serving? So those businesses that have all now dramatically pivoted into face masks, sanitizers, etc., as their core means of business, as an opportunity right now, what happens when we're through the crisis, when lockdown starts to end, when an antidote or I've just hit a blank, when a vaccination, that's it, when a vaccine is actually discovered and is made available into the market, what happens to those businesses? They're going to have to re-pivot. So all of these 10 steps can very much be words on a page. So what I've wanted to do is bring that home through just a very, very quick graphic, a very quick case study, if you will, which is based a little bit on reality. But as they say, the names have been changed to protect the innocent. So let's look at a quick case study that impacts an ecosystem. So here's a fitness studio, whether it's a Virgin Active, whether it's Planet Fitness, whatever the case might be, whether it's the mom and pop shop down the road. Here's a fitness studio, and let's ask ourselves, what does the fitness studio do? Well, the fitness studio sells memberships. It sells a lifestyle. Those memberships, that lifestyle is supported by member contracts, which have typically been drawn up. It's a standard contract. And through these member contracts, the fitness studio offers a certain service to their members. And let's, for the sake of this illustration, say they're offering spinning classes. Those spinning classes are made possible through 150 square meter floor space, which they lease from their landlord, and through 50 stationary bicycles that have been made available by a supplier. And by made available, I mean they've bought it. So whether that's Trojan or one of those other names, they've bought 50 stationary bicycles. It's parked in 150 square meter floor space, and through their trainers, they offer spinning classes throughout the day. And let's say it's a full day, so it's 5 or 6 spinning classes potentially that are being offered to those members. But then along comes an event. Along comes something that directly impacts that business and means that either members can no longer make it to that fitness studio, to that gym. They're not allowed to go in there, and we've seen that during COVID-19. Or for some reason, the fitness studio is not able to offer access to those facilities any longer. So what happens? They pivot. And this is what their pivot actually looks like. So that studio decides that instead of selling the memberships, instead of bringing members into the fitness studio, they are now going to lease those bicycles to the members who have had contracts with them before. So what does that mean? It means they're going to allow members to take the bicycles in the fitness studio and take them home and be able to continue their fitness routine there. What does that mean? Well, the impact is now that instead of selling memberships and membership contracts, they now need to convert those membership contracts to lease agreements, leasing the stationary bicycle from the gym and into the member's home. And what does that mean? It means they need to draw on the expertise of a lawyer or an attorney, somebody who is skilled and schooled in the art of contracting. We're still dealing with the 50 stationary bikes, but we now no longer need the 150 square meter floor space. So we've freed up some capital, and we've mitigated the loss of rent in a time when we're not actually able to use that space. So we're still using the 50 stationary bicycles to generate income in the business, but those stationary bicycles need to be delivered to the customer's home. So we need to now deal with a logistics contractor to collect them from the studio and deliver them to wherever our members are. We now also need to retrain our staff because we can no longer maintain those units in a gym environment. We have to maintain them in the home of our members, and we need to make sure that they are of sufficient quality and sufficient standard that they're not going to break down in particular and potentially injure our members who've taken the leases with us. So we may need to also outsource quality control on those units and outsource maintenance in addition to retraining our staff. Now, when we had the 150 square meter floor space, we did maybe 6 classes a day with different trainers delivering those classes. Well, now we still want to offer training to our members who've leased the stationary bikes, but we're now going to do that in an online way. And so the online classes are still delivered by a trainer, but obviously they're now delivered virtually. So we need to engage with suppliers who can provide production equipment, and we need a telco provider, telecommunications provider, to provide data and enable us to be able to broadcast these classes onto either a YouTube platform or onto our own bespoke platform that we might be putting together. But here's something to consider. When we had 50 stationary bikes, we could run 6 classes, and therefore we could put 300 people through those bikes a day. Now we've leased out 50 bicycles. That's only 50 members. And I don't know about you, but I'm not that fit. I can't do 6 spinning classes a day. I could maybe do one in the morning, and I could maybe do one in the evening. That means I'm only accessing a class twice. So maybe our 50 stationary bicycles are now only generating 100 classes for us on a per day basis, or for this particular facility. So these are some of the questions, and that's a particular question of how big is that bubble? At what point can we no longer sustain that offering on the basis of the facilities and the capacity that we have available? Or do we need to bring in more bicycles and gear the business up to be able to deliver that across to more clients? And does this fundamentally change the way that this fitness studio operates? So this impact on an ecosystem, really I've put together just to illustrate and demonstrate how the business operation impacts the different internal and external stakeholders of a business. This is based, as I say, on a real case study, not necessarily in the full detail of it, but this has actually happened. And so some of these questions will have been grappled with and will have been dealt with by the businesses who needed to do this, or the fitness studio that decided to follow this route. So, when we look at these things, it's really easy to see that a change or a pivot in a business is not something to be done lightly. It's not something to be done overnight, especially if the expertise is not there, and especially if we're moving into a space that we don't really have the knowledge of. So it's really important to consider again that it's foundational. It is fundamental impact on the business, and that it impacts 80% of the steps that we need to take in order to actually change a business. Impacts very much the foundations of a business. And so again, to reiterate the point, it is not something to be taken lightly. It is not something to be done in a hurry, and it is certainly not something to be done without actually scoping out what the impact of that opportunity is going to be. So, ladies and gentlemen, those are the 10 points around pivoting a business, and a practical illustration of how that impacts the ecosystem that an organization, that a business may well find itself in, and some of the considerations that they need to take into account in order to survive, but also in order to plan into future growth of that business. And the only way that you can plan into the future growth is to ensure that you have the financial stability, you have the income, you have the ability to deliver to your customers and clients, you have a clear view of who those customers and clients are, and you can consistently get your value-added product, your value-based product to those customers, to those clients, drawing on the expertise of your supplier support base and your distribution system, and then of course also your internal resources, whether that's your finance, whether that's your staff, all focused along the leadership vision in order to be able to navigate the business through that challenge period and bring certainty into an environment and certainty in a time of change. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your attention. And very happy to move, Madam Director, into a Q&A space. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Brehndan. That was very informative. It was very detailed, but yet precise. I think it is important to have such conversations in times of uncertainty. And as you have said, that a thriving mindset is important, and new leadership or leadership vision is also important, so that it provides certainty in terms of uncertainty in like times like this. So I will take questions for the people that are on the floor. If anyone's got a question. I don't have anything that's written yet. There was one question that came through, and that was to request for the presentation, and I've said that we'll have a conversation with you, Brehndan, afterwards, just to see in terms of what you can share with the members. But besides that, I haven't seen any question come through. I've been kicked out a few times while you were presenting, so I don't know if I've missed anything. So if anyone wants to have a question or wants to speak to Brehndan, can they raise their hand, and we'll have the facilitator recognize them, and we can have the Q&A question start. But I think that was very informative. I've certainly learned a lot myself, being in a business, and also going through the turbulent times of COVID. And as you've said, that COVID doesn't necessarily mean it's not the starting point of the downfall of the business. It happens. I mean, the downfall or the uncertain times have happened before, and that's where your presentations that's where your presentation stated to say it's not necessarily based on COVID, it's based on economic challenges. So economic challenges happen every day, and COVID just seemed to worsen things that were already there. So COVID, so symptoms were there. If I were to put it into medical terms, symptoms were there, but now COVID has made everything worse. So it just made a sick person who had symptoms there just to make it worse. So I think you've clearly stated what needs to be done. So you've come up with a solution, which is what we need. I've got a question here from Maxwell C. Mabago. It says, when can a business develop its own pivot, and at what complexity level?
So it's a very good question. Thank you, Maxwell. So when can a business develop its own pivot, and at what complexity level? So that really depends on, firstly, the challenge that the business is facing. Secondly, it depends on what type of business that is. I've previously said in a few other forums that, in my opinion, there's no such thing as big business and small business. There is only business. The fundamentals of business is the same, whether you are a multi-million or multi-billion rand business, or whether you are a mom and pop shop operation down the street. The only thing that impacts how your business operates is complexity. So typically, the larger the business, the more complex it is. And so that determines how the change needs to be managed. So I can't give you an exact answer that says it is at this point that you need to pivot, or change. But it is definitely based on the complexity of the organization and the challenge that organization faces at that particular point. So if it's a financial challenge, and maybe let's take that as an example. If it's a financial challenge, there are signs that are going to come through. There are signs that we will consistently be seeing, either in a negative profitability, or in inability to reach break even, or in cash flow issues. So not having enough cash in the business to be able to meet the operating expenses. A very good example of that is what we've seen. So am I on video or am I off?
Your camera is off, Brehndan. Please switch it on.
Okay, it's telling me that I'm on. Can you see me now?
Nothing yet.
Nothing. Let's try that again.
Mm-hmm.
No. So it's telling me my video is on.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Let's continue. I think it doesn't really matter. We would love to see your face, but I mean, clearly technology is not on our side today. So it's fine. Let's continue.
Might not be playing along. Okay, so as I was saying, there are signs that would definitely give us an indication. A clear example of that was what we saw happening with SAA, where, as an organization, they'd been in bailout for 10, 11, 12 years, consistently seeing that they're not actually generating sufficient income to be able to meet the operating expenses of the business. And that is a sign. So the mere fact that no decision, no action was taken around changing the business model is very much an indication that the time for pivot, the time for change had been ignored. The challenges had been ignored. And so, that is very definitely a trigger point to say it's time for us to do something differently.
Thank you for that, Brehndan. I've got another question from Lili Moabi. It says, which matrix can be a true measure of a success in a business? I don't know if my camera's on. It looks like it's wheeling. Am I on?
I'm not seeing you either. I think we might be having the same issue.
Can you hear me though?
Can hear you, yes.
Okay. Let's answer the second question. It says, which matrix can be a true measure of success in a business?
Which matrix can be a true measure of success in a business? So again, I think it's dependent on what it is that we are defining as success. So if the challenge that the business is facing is on, let's say again, the marketing front, then I would say what we're wanting to be seeing is how much our marketing is delivering leads and lead potential into the business. So how many leads are we generating in order to be able to make sales? I would then say, let's look at the conversion of those leads into actual sales, because that leads us into a revenue conversation. If the challenge in the business is cash flow, then obviously we are looking to measure inflow of capital versus inflow of revenue versus outflow of cash. And at the same time, we also want to be looking at things like, what is the cash gap? In other words, from the time that the sale is initiated, from the time that I send out an invoice to the time that the money hits my bank account, what does that time frame actually look like? And what impact does that have on my cash flow? Similarly, if we're looking at generating cash flow in a business as part of a challenge, then I would also want to ask the question, how many assets am I holding? Or what does my asset holding look like? How much of that can I liquidate in order to generate capital, reduce my stock holding in order to reduce overhead? So it is a very difficult question to answer as a true measure of success in a business, but I would leave the answer in this format. It's not profitability. The measure of success of a business is not how profitable the business is. It is how much cash flow is in the business. Cash flow is the true measure of the health of a business.
I agree. I think we've got Mncedi Sitwala. I don't know if you've got a question. I think there's someone that's been accepted into the room. Is there someone that...
Ladies, please switch on your audio.
Hi guys, how are you?
Good. How are you, Mncedi? Can you shoot with your question? Just introduce yourself and what your question is.
It's not really a question, it's just a comment. I don't know if you'll take comments.
That's perfect. You can shoot.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think I just want to emphasize on what Brehndan said in his introduction earlier on, when he said a successful business is one that can function and function successfully so without the owner being present. And I think that actually, becomes a very strong determiner for me on whether a business of any nature is able to pivot. So, for example, another speaker that I've heard before once differentiated the difference between working in a business and working on a business. So in order for a person to be able to imagine new solutions, like in the example that Brehndan was presenting of the gym, it would need the owner of that outlet to be working on the business and not in it. So if you are constantly absorbed by administration and day-to-day running of the business, you don't have time to imagine, new solutions and to benchmark yourself against what other service providers are offering out there. because you are constantly absorbed in the day-to-day frustrations of running of the business. So, in order for one to be able to sort of step out and be able to view the business from a distance and start working on it as opposed to working in it, you need to make sure that you've got very strong management structures in place to be able to allow your business to function without you. Because if it's constantly relying on your presence, then you don't have time to imagine new solutions. So I think that's my contribution, and thank you so much, Brehndan, for the session and for the presentation. If I am working in my business, I wouldn't have time for this session, and my mind would not be able to open up to new ideas and to new strategies. But the mere fact that we are trying to work on it as opposed to in it allows us, to engage with platforms and forums such as these ones, and it's eye-opening. So yeah, thank you so much.
Awesome, and excellent points that you raised. Yes, can you hear me?
Hello?
Yes, you are audible.
Yep.
I can hear you.
So just to respond to that, I think some excellent points that you raised.
Me, I'm off the platform. Thank you so much for that.
So the focus on working on the business very definitely speaks to the vision of the business owner or the business leader in this context as well, and that speaks to the what I was speaking about earlier in terms of our destination mastery, the foundation of the business in terms of knowing where we're going, what that vision looks like, what do we want to achieve, and what do we want the business to look like ultimately.
I agree. Thank you for that, DC. That was actually quite insightful. And I think just to anchor what Brehndan's saying is that it's important to have visionary leadership, because if you have a vision, then that's when you're able to work on the business. You're able to see further than what you are. When you are inside something, you can't see it. So you actually need to go and look at it from an outside perspective. You work on it. You have a vision. You have a foresight, and then that's how it's going to work. So I think that was very insightful, and thank you, Brehndan, for that. Is there any other question? I've got a question though, Brehndan. I think you've touched on something that was quite important. You spoke about the concept of 100% changes to deliver 1%. And also versus 1% change to impact 100%. So I think I just want you to unpack it for me a little bit, like on layman's terms, to say,
okay,
I understand that you like, maybe actually let me not say what I understand. Just unpack it a little bit, and then so that you can actually how do you? So my question basically is, based on that concept, how do you apply it on an everyday life? So not necessarily in a business, but on how do you then say, how do I live your life to say that you are not going to spend 100% to deliver 1%, but however, you'd rather spend 1% to deliver 100%.
Right. Okay. So, and I'm really sorry that you can't see me. Just completely
such a pity,
blacked out.
Hey? I know, right?
Maybe.
And when we tested this thing, it worked, hey? I'm so disappointed. I know, but it's fine.
So maybe the system is just trying to, on my behalf, put up a Black Lives Matter protest and just putting up a black screen.
That too.
So let's look at it this way. So the principle is, do 100 things that will each effect 1% change, rather than do one thing that we hope will effect 100% change. So just to reiterate the principle, if you're not successful at the one thing that you hope will deliver 100% of change, you've lost 100% of opportunity. In other words, doing one thing that you hope is going to turn your business around, if that thing fails, your business doesn't get turned around and you're still in the position you were in. When you do 100 things that each look to deliver 1%, then If you don't manage to do all 100, but you only do 20 or you only do 50, then you've done 50% of change, or you've done 20% of change. Now, the principle could be do 10 things that each impact 10% of your business. So one of the easiest ways to illustrate this is to say, all right, when we're marketing the business, what a lot of people do when they talk to me about their marketing strategies and how they can use that to build their business, they'll come to me and they say, I've got my Facebook page sorted out. I have been putting up posts on Facebook, but nobody's actually buying from me. Nobody's coming to me. Nobody's interested in. I've got like 1,000 likes, but no actual purchases. And so I ask the question, what else are you doing? No, I'm not doing anything else. I'm only doing Facebook marketing. So because you're only doing Facebook marketing, 100% of your effort is focused on Facebook marketing. You're doing one thing that is focusing 100% of effort and hoping to achieve 100% change. Where instead, what you should be looking at is, do I need to use newspaper advertising? Do I need to use radio advertising? How can I use word of mouth? How can I use a referral network? How can I use social media? How can I use my website? How can I use flyers? How can I use network marketing? How can I use mobile marketing? How can I use billboards? I've literally just mentioned 10 marketing tactics that potentially could each deliver leads and an impact into a business. If my billboard marketing fails, I still have 9 others that I can measure impact on. If my social media fails, I've got 9 others that are still working to generate impact on my business. So it's about targeting the activity in a way that delivers results, but not putting all of your eggs in one basket. That's actually the simplest way to describe it. It's not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Oh, well done. Actually, that's an investment principle. You can't put all your eggs in one basket. So actually, I think that's cleared it for me. That's cleared it. That made it. I don't know if there's any other questions. Maybe I've missed it. I just went out a little bit, technology. So if there's anything else, can I wrap up? I think also in time we've got 9 minutes into this left, so I think it's time to wrap up. I'd like to thank everyone that tuned in for this session. Really appreciate it. I think it's important. It's important for everyone to understand whether you're in business or not. So if you're not in business, you get affected by a business. Therefore, because we buy things, we either work for someone else. Therefore, everyone is impacted. I would like to thank everyone that has tuned in. You could have done something else with your time, spent time with your family, you could have watched Netflix, but you decided to tune in and get some insights. Therefore, we are really, really appreciative of your time. If you're not a BMF member, please do join in. You can send an email to BMFGP and they'll respond to you. They'll tell you how to join as a member. We've got more of this coming. We've got more sessions that we are lined up. I think actually this works. This is more, as much as COVID has been something that we didn't expect. I think it works. It works for everyone because you can tune in at your own time at home instead of having to drive to an event, spending time having to drive back. So this, you can log in at home and you can actually get value from it. So also we'd appreciate your feedback. You can send your feedback from the same email that you received the invite from, to say that this is what you want to hear. This is what you want to see. This is what affects us. I think as Mpo also had put it, that the point of the BMF is to empower Black people, is to empower us to make sure that we're in the same playing level as everyone else, to make sure that we contribute to the economy, we contribute to the Black business, we are part of what's happening in our lives. We actually have an impact, we make an impact. So do send us an email, do join in. And also Brehndan, as I told you, is a certified business coach. and actually it's not even just business, it's a personal coach as well. So I mean, if you want a coach as your career in your career, you can contact him. We will share his details, so you can actually send an email to BMFGP, and they'll respond to you. He's offering 5 free coaching sessions. So 5 people who are interested in being coached by Brehndan can send an email, and he'll come back to you. He'll give you your personal coaching, so he'll tailor make a coaching session for you. I actually want one. I think I'm going to send an email just now. So please don't send it yet, because I'm still talking, because I also want to be part of that. So please send an email to BMFGP, ask and say you're interested in being coached by Brehndan, and he'll tailor make a coaching session for you. And I think you get value from that. I think you will get value from that. So the requirement is that you just need to be a paid up BMF member. So if you're not a BMF member yet, please join. It's $750, I think, or even less, that you need to join. It's for the whole year. You get a whole lot of value. I've received a whole lot of value being a BMF member. I've gotten a lot. Actually, I can talk about it all day. So it's actually worth it. You get networks. You get to meet people. You get to meet Brehndan. I mean, now I've got Brehndan on my speed dial. I can call him. I'm like, Brehndan, help me on this. I've got this business idea. So it's actually it's worth it to be a BMF member. I promise you. And besides that, that's it from my side. Thank you to the organizers. Thank you to Brehndan for committing your time. We really appreciate it. These are sessions that are worth it. They bring insight to our lives. I mean, I didn't know anything about pivoting in such economic times. And I mean, if I were to tell my personal story, my business, my company is going through a business rescue time, so it's actually a hard time for everyone. So I think I've learned from what Brehndan has told us. It's very important that you attend such things. It's actually refreshing as well. It's very refreshing because you come out and you're like, okay, there's people that actually can have solutions to things that are happening. So in closing, I'd like to thank everyone who joined in as part of this. I'd like to thank the BMF province for arranging such, the national office for making sure that this platform is available, the people that attended, and to our presenter, Brehndan, thank you. We really appreciate it. And this will be available on YouTube. Please subscribe to the BMF Gauteng YouTube channel. Also on the BMF social media pages. I think it's on Twitter and on Facebook. Just look at those come through. Follow us on Twitter. It's at BMF Gauteng, and also on Facebook at BMF Gauteng. Follow us there. You'll see what there'll be other events that are coming through. And I think it's easy like this because you can just log in and you can just follow what's happening. It's all relevant stuff. You can learn from it. I mean, what do you have to lose? There's nothing else that you lose. You actually gain. So thank you to everyone. And in ending, I just want to say that COVID has been, for me personally, I think it's been a very interesting time. It's been, I don't think, I never anticipated such in my life. I didn't think I'd ever go through such. So it's been a time to reflect. It's been a time to rewind, pause, rewind, go back and reset the button, think and say, is this what I want? What do I want in my life? So I think I've actually learned, and I'm actually grateful for it, actually. I'm grateful that I had time to pause. I think it was important that everyone pauses and everyone thinks about, is this what you want? And what do you do going forward? So that I saw something in writing and says, nothing should go back to normal. Normal wasn't working. And if we go back to normal, if we go back to normal and to the way things were, it means that we've lost the lessons. May we rise up and do better. So in ending, I'd like to say, may we rise up and may we do better. May we then make sure that we are counted to say that we have made a difference in this life. Thank you.